is Tim with Ace Appliance in Toledo, Ohio, and welcome back to another in-home diagnostic video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com. Okay, so we are on a Fisher Paykel dryer. The complaint is taking a long time to dry and or no heat. We did run the machine and found that there is no heat at all coming out of it. So we are now going to get in and check some of the heating components. And we're going to begin by accessing those components by lifting up the lid, removing the two little covers to access the screws under there to remove the front panel. So we'll remove those and then take a Phillips screwdriver to remove the Phillips screw on each side. And this will allow us to lift up the lid and gain access to the other components. And then now we just have two screws right at the front so that we can remove the front panel. They are also Phillips screws. And this panel has some inserts here that line up to make sure that it goes in properly. So it's a little tricky to get off. And as I remove it, you can see the different slots in there that both sides need to come out of. Once those are removed, we can just extend the sides and remove the entire front. There is a ground clip to the front of the cabinet that needs to be slid off and removed so that we can remove the front panel. Okay, so now we have accessed the heating portion of the dryer, and we can check the resettable thermostat and the other fuses and thermostats at the front and see if we have a problem there. If not, we will go on to check the heating element itself, which this part will need to be removed to properly check. Okay, the first component we're going to check is the resettable thermostat, just to see if it wasn't popped. So we'll remove the connectors to it and take our volt ohm meter. I have it to check for continuity as an audible beep. So we'll go from one side of the thermostat to the other, and that should be closed with no beep. We'll now reset the thermostat and see if we have continuity. So we do have continuity now, and that we'll proceed to, since we're down here, check the other ones as well, but it looks like that may be our issue right there, and proceed to just check our other thermostats as well. And that one checks good. And then we have one more back over here. And that one checks good as well. The only thing left to check on this before we run it would be to just check the elements themselves. And there's two separate elements. There is a connector here and on the back to properly check the front element, and a connector here and on the back to properly check the rear portion. So since we're down here, we'll go ahead and remove the heater box and check for proper values on the heaters. Okay, so we have two mounting screws that hold the heater box to the cabinet, and they're both Phillips screws. That will remove. And now the entire heater box can be removed, at which point you can see the other two connections for the heaters themselves. So we're going to go ahead and remove those connectors. And now we have really good access to both sides of the heaters. It'd be worth it anyway to get them all cleaned out. Okay, we're also going to remove the other connectors on the heater so we can take a proper ohm measurement. And if you'll notice the debris, we'll get that out of there and make sure that that's clean. And now we can check each heater. Same, just simple continuity test. And we'll go from one side of the heater to the other. And that front one checks good. Now we'll go from the rear side of the heater to the other. And that checks good as well. So it looks like we just had a thermostat pop, and resetting it will take care of the problem, and we'll clean the rest of the dryer out and be good to go. Now, quite possibly with the amount of lint built up on the front of the heater box would cause this to overheat and pop the thermostat for safety reasons, so it can be cleaned and inspected. So we're going to go through and clean out the entire dryer before we put it back together. One last check before we clean it out is I'm just going to check to make sure that the elements aren't shorted to ground, and we'll make sure our audible beep is there, and we'll check one side of the element to the casing, this side to the case, and both sides on the back. And we're good. Now we'll just clean the dryer out, put it back together, and check for normal operation. Now we're gonna clean out the dryer. Now that we've cleaned out the dryer and all the spots, making sure to get really good in the vent portion, we're going to reconnect the heaters to their appropriate connections. And reinstall the heater box into the cabinet. And there are two indents in the back that line up to get it properly seated. And once it is properly seated, the front two supports will line up nicely. And then we can secure them back into place. And we will reattach our front heater connections. Just give a once over on all the fittings or connections. Make sure the heater box is in there. And now we'll reinstall the front cover and the lid. To begin putting the front cover back on, we'll install the ground section, making sure it's on. And there are two indents on each side to line this portion up. And then we'll have to slide that out and line up all the red tabs. There's a little spot right here that we need to get over to get that properly seated, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. You just have to check to make sure they're all lined up, and then we'll install the 2 screws up front to secure it. Now we can bring the entire lid assembly back down. Line up both sides. And reinstall our mounting bolts and the covers that go over them. Now we'll finish on the other side. And now we'll plug it back in and check for normal operation. Thank you for watching another in-home diagnostic video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com.